Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
David Stearns should not care one bit about Met fans' feelings, the problem that Yankee owner Hal Steinbrenner has, and are we witnessing the greatest quarterback misjudgment in NFL draft history? It's all right now on this edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome into this episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Lots to get into on this edition of the pod, Thanksgiving edition of the podcast. So happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. We'll get into some New York sports stuff a little bit later in the podcast, but we have one big NFL story that I want to hit on as well. But before we get into any of that, I do have to remind you to please hit that subscribe button. It really does help out the podcast. YouTube tells me that less than 50% of the viewers are actually subscribed. So you can fix that very easily. Just hit that little button wherever it is. I'm not sure, but hit that button and it really does help out the podcast grow, and make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're listening or watching on. All right, let's get into the NFL story, because the Minnesota Vikings, their 2025 season has been actually quite fascinating, but not in the way that we thought, because this year was supposed to be a bridge into the Vikings' future, and something completely different has happened. They are a franchise that seemed to be a model franchise in the NFL, set up for success. And now, as we hit week 13, it looks like they are back at square one, and it all has to do with their quarterback. The Vikings may have made one of the greatest quarterback misjudgments in NFL draft history. Let's go back a couple of years ago, 2024 draft. Vikings select JJ McCarthy with the 10th pick in that draft, coming off a national championship at Michigan, heading to the Vikings. What seemed like an ideal situation. It seemed like the future was set up for success for the Vikings and for McCarthy. But here we are, deep into year two, and his development, it has not stalled, it's not plateaued. It looks like it's never started. Statistically, JJ McCarthy has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, not just this year, of the last 2.5 decades. I'm sure you've seen this stat by now. JJ McCarthy ranks 851st out of 852 quarterbacks at EPA per dropback. That's since 2000. The only player ranked lower is Jamarcus Russell. You never want to be on a list with Jamarcus Russell. And when eliminating the dropbacks with quick pressure where there's really nothing he can do under 2.5 seconds, his performance against the Packers ranked 344th out of 346. That's how bad it's been. It has been an absolute nightmare. And there's no numbers that look good. His record as the starting quarterback, 2-4. He's completing just over 50% of his passes, 54%. He's got 6 touchdowns, but he's got 10 interceptions. He's been sacked 20 times. He's got less than 1,000 yards in 6 starts. And his quarterback rating, I don't know all that goes into a quarterback rating, but I know 90, 100, those are pretty good. His right now is 57.9. Those numbers are rough. There's no way to explain them away. But the incredible thing is this: as bad as the numbers look, the eye test, it looks even worse. Every single week when you watch the Vikings and watch JJ McCarthy play, he looks completely overwhelmed by the speed of the game. You hear about the game slowing down when guys get some experience. It looks like for him, it's sped up. He is hesitant in the pocket. His accuracy, it's almost non-existent. The footwork, I don't know all the different things about playing quarterback, but the mechanics, even to a novice, they look like someone who is the emergency starter rather than somebody who was a first-round pick. And for a guy who is advertised as this athletic, mobile quarterback, there is no confidence when he takes off. It looks like he is running for his life. Now, they had that comeback against Chicago earlier this season, which seemed like it kind of came out of the blue, and you thought, all right, maybe this is the starting point for him. As more time passes, that feels like a complete outlier. Everything that has happened since then has been a highlight reel of repeated mistakes. This is not a guy struggling with one aspect of playing the quarterback position. It's across the board failure. Everything that goes into playing quarterback in the NFL, processing, accuracy, mechanics, poise, confidence clearly is shot. And with all the other things going wrong, it's not a surprise the confidence is hurting as well. Now, a lot of young quarterbacks, they fail because their organization fails them. I bring this up all the time. When you get drafted early on, you're generally going to a very bad team. And sometimes some of the variables that are outside of your control are enough to do you in, right? Bad protection or bad coaching or a bad supporting cast, no stability in the front office. Generally, if you're drafting at the top of the draft, you're not a good organization, and it's usually not a one-year thing. But with McCarthy, that's not the story here. If anything, he walked into a dream development situation, a very quarterback-friendly head coach in Kevin O'Connell, who's had nothing but success dealing with quarterbacks. He has a system that's designed to create easy throw, layups, rhythm throws. They have a good roster, a playoff caliber roster. We're in the playoffs last year. And they have elite weapons at the skill position, including maybe the best wide receiver in the game in Justin Jefferson, and a front office and coach coming off years of quarterback successes. You know, this is not the typical first-round bust quarterback. This is not Zach Wilson getting thrown into chaos with the Jets, or Bryce Young, who's dealing with all the things going wrong with the Carolina Panthers organization, or Justin Fields dealing with the situation when he got drafted by the Chicago Bears. McCarthy had everything that a young first-round quarterback is supposed to have outside of his control, and for whatever reason, he's still sinking, and sinking at a historic rate. And remember, the Vikings, they didn't just settle for McCarthy. He's not just somebody who fell into their lap. They chose him basically twice. Minnesota didn't just draft JJ McCarthy where they were. They targeted him. They identified him as their guy moving forward. They traded up in the first round twice in the 2024 draft just to get him. So this was not an accident. You know, sometimes there's a guy who's on the board when you're drafting late in the first round and he's a quarterback and you figure, all right, we'll take him and we'll see how it goes. This was a deeply researched, deliberately executed plan by a front office and a coaching staff that, again, has a strong track record of quarterback evaluation. If those guys can get that wrong, what chance do other organizations have? And right now, it looks like they bet the future of the franchise on a quarterback who just simply cannot play at this level. And it's not like they didn't have other options as well. It wasn't like, hey, we drafted this guy, we got to play him. Last year, when JJ McCarthy went down with his knee injury and Sam Darnold stepped in, Sam Darnold also stepped up, right? Led Minnesota to a 14-3 season, made the playoffs, stabilized the organization, executed O'Connell's system, and played at almost a Pro Bowl type level. And when he left for Seattle and got that contract, I was not a big fan of Sam Darnold. I felt like it was mostly O'Connell's system, but it made sense that you have to turn to JJ McCarthy because it's time for him to go. Should have went last year, but the injury held him back. And now that feels like one of the most avoidable self-inflicted wounds of the entire offseason. O'Connell and the Viking front office didn't just choose McCarthy, they chose McCarthy over Sam Darnold. They saw what Sam Darnold could be in their system and still decided, hey, we spent a top 10 pick on this guy. We have to use this guy. And that decision might very well set back this franchise for years to come, if not half a decade, because this has bust written all over it. Some first-round quarterbacks, it takes a while, right? Josh Allen, it took a while. Peyton Manning, it took a while. And even the guys who end up being failures, they have some special talent, either arm talent or elite speed, or they're just dynamic athletes, and they have flashes where you think, boy, if this guy ever figures it out. With McCarthy, what's that trait exactly? He doesn't have a big arm. He's not a dynamic athlete. He's not a big scrambler. He's not physically big. He doesn't anticipate throws really well. The footwork and all the mechanics we talked about, the decision-making, if you've watched any highlights, he's made Zach Wilson look like Terry Bradshaw. This has the look and feel of a guy who's going to go down as one of the biggest quarterback draft busts of all time. And for a franchise that historically knows what it's doing, that's the unique part about this. And an organization that had Sam Darnold last year and Daniel Jones. The idea that you can never lose your job to injury, maybe that's one we have to reevaluate. because now watching JJ McCarthy being erratic and unreliable, the Vikings, if they had that decision to make over again, it's clear that I don't think would make the same decision, because the decision they made, they were wrong. So now with JJ McCarthy in concussion protocol, it's time for a backup quarterback. Mac Brosmer will get the start this week with McCarthy sidelined with the concussion protocol. Brosmer is an undrafted rookie who has to now go start against the Seattle Seahawks, which is not exactly an easy thing to prepare for. But you think about what he walks into, based on the struggles of McCarthy, even though the expectations are very low, his value, Brosmer's value, might be simply he's not JJ McCarthy. And if he has any success at all, it might give the team a spark if he's able to move the ball and simply avoid the catastrophic mistakes and simply run the offense. This can go one of two ways. Brosmer comes in and struggles just as badly, and the Vikings, are still in the same spot. But what if he comes in and is clearly better than McCarthy? What does that mean for the future of this season and their decision process moving beyond this year? Because what do you do if you're the Vikings? In fairness to McCarthy, he's only started 6 games, missed all of last year. He's a young quarterback who missed his rookie season because of an injury, and young quarterbacks are always going to struggle. You have to expect that at some point. But the question at this point, with what you've seen even in the 6 games, is do you think there's enough time to fix all that's wrong with him? And how does he fix that? In the offseason? During NFL games? It's hard to envision everything turning around. So the Vikings were looking for stability at the most important position in sports, and they're an organization, again, that knows what it's doing. But this is not just a bad season. This is the realization that the organization clearly pushed all the chips into the center of the table on the wrong quarterback at the wrong time. This is a full-scale quarterback crisis for an organization that should know better. And unless something dramatically changes with JJ McCarthy over the last part of this season and going into the offseason, he is going to be remembered as one of the most damaging draft decisions any NFL team has made in decades.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
Okay, let's get into some New York sports topics. We'll start with the New York Mets, who made the first real splash of their offseason, making that trade for Brandon Nimmo to the Texas Rangers for Marcus Semien. And Met fans, the reaction, shocked, outraged, blindsided. And honestly, I got to be honest, guys, I'm surprised that you're surprised. Like, what did you think was going to happen this offseason? The franchise just delivered an epic failure of a regular season. You spent the second most in baseball on your team, and you not only missed the playoffs, you missed out on the final playoff spot to the Cincinnati Reds. If there was ever a moment for wholesale organizational changes, yes, this would be the time. And this is a fine place to start. So let's talk about the return of Marcus Semien. I heard Met fans crying that Semien is not enough. He's 35 years old. He's washed up. Let's be clear. Brandon Nimmo was not an easy contract to move. Guy can't play center field. He really can't defend even in left field, has no arm anymore. And his financial ramifications, $20 million for the next 5 years for Brandon Nimmo. Like, what did you expect the Mets to get back for this guy? A top 10 prospect? Multiple young stars? There was not a lot. To me, this is a sign of brilliance by David Stearns being able to move off this contract. The return was secondary. Unloading the player and unloading that money. Mission accomplished for David Stearns. So this is, again, what we talked about in a previous episode with the Mets. David Stearns is entering year 3 running this team, and this roster does not look anything like a David Stearns type team. And this is the man who knows what he's doing. This is the guy who's the baseball architect, not Steve Cohen, not the fans. David Stearns is your only way through this. And this offseason should not be about sentimental favorites. It's about fixing the baseball team so that it is a functioning product moving forward. And Brandon Nimmo and moving off of him is step 1. But be assured, there's going to be more steps with this roster. Jeff McNeil is probably not going to be back. And you should prepare yourself that Pete Alonso almost certainly is not going to return again. Think about the logic of this. David Stearns has made it clear that he wants a better defensive team. He dumped a corner outfielder who can't defend. You think he's going to bring back a poor defensive first baseman on some mega contract 5-6 years? No, the writing is on the wall. This is not an emotional thing. It is strategic. But I've heard fans, well, you can't lose Nimmo and Alonso in the same offseason. That would be too much for the fan base to take. Guys, grow up. You're not in Kansas City. This is not Milwaukee. This is not the Minnesota Twins. You're in New York. Last offseason, all the Met fans were talking about how they're big brother now and the Yankees are the little brother. You want to compete against the Dodgers and the Yankees and all the big heavy hitters? Well, you don't get to clutch your pearls the moment a fan favorite on the downside of his career is traded. Winning is all that matters. Not nostalgia, not fan favorites, not vibes. David Stearns should not care one single iota about how Met fans are emotionally going to process this. The job is simple. Build the best baseball team, period. End of discussion. The Nimmo trade was the first swing, but I would say buckle up because clearly he's not done working on this roster. It's not just about adding, it's about subtracting. And the fact that this was the first where he started, to me, that's a good sign for the Mets moving forward. All right, secondly, Hal Steinbrenner spoke to the media on Monday about the financial state of his team. And look, this is Thanksgiving. It's probably important we all give thanks that we're not in the poor situation that Hal is in. It's very, very difficult owning the New York Yankees franchise. Listening to him, you could hear the burden. It almost sounded like a chore. It sounded like he just found out he got jury duty. He makes owning the Yankees sound like a nuisance, like the poor guy is suffering through it by the fact he's owning this billion-dollar iconic brand in all of sports. And it's the classic guy who complains about he owns something cool, but he only sees the downside. Like, have you ever met somebody who has a boat and said, oh, wow, this boat is beautiful, it must be so fun, and all they talk about is the maintenance and the winterizing and the dock fees and all. Like, dude, you own one of the most iconic brands in all of sports. You own the New York Yankees. Nobody, no matter how long you try to play it out, is ever going to feel sympathy for you as the owner of the New York Yankees. Now, he got into some of the financial questions about where the payroll is going to wind up, said it would be ideal if the payroll went down. Here's the thing. Whenever an owner starts talking about finances and how hard it is, remember, with the exception of the Braves, who are publicly traded, baseball teams do not have to show us any actual proof. So when Hal talks about not turning a profit or the possibility to turn a profit, the assumption to me is that it's not really about telling the truth. There's no obligation to tell the truth. Owners have no legal requirement to be honest about money. And really, since it's a business, why would they? So if Hal wanted to have credibility on this issue, rather than saying, I don't want to get into it, show us the books. Show us the balance sheets. But obviously, he's not going to do that. Why is that? Like, if there were actual proof that this was so difficult, you would think that he would back that up. If he really believes the finances are so tight, here's an idea. Sell the team. You get $10 billion for the Yankees, if not more. But he's not going to do that. Why is that? Why do you think that is? To me, a lot of this, now Hal does this every year, but with the CBA fight coming up next year, I'm sure every owner in the sport has been given their talking points, right? Baseball economics are very difficult. We got payroll limitations. We need a more competitive system. And it's all PR trying to make the case for a salary cap. But make sure, it's all posturing. It's all noise. This is not, if they want to go down that road again, we'll have the same legal fight that we've always had in terms of the CBA. So, but let's put the dollars and cents aside for a second, because I think Hal has another problem. And it's that he has no passion for owning the New York Yankees. The fan base is incredibly passionate, but Hal does not come across as a guy who's tortured by the idea that the Yankees haven't won a World Series since 2009. Doesn't really seem bothered by it at all. Doesn't seem angry. He seems annoyed by the questions about how much he spends, but that's about it. And this is a departure because George Steinbrenner, you can say what you want, and there were criticisms, but he had passion, and Hal has absolutely none of that. And passion is not something you can teach. Clearly, it's not something you can hand down. It doesn't come down in the genes, apparently. And either way, you either care or you don't. And in terms of the drought, the World Series drought, Hal does not seem to care all that much. So, look, in the future, maybe he'll clean this up, the messaging of it. But I would say don't even judge him on what the quotes are. Judge him by the actions. Let's see what happens this offseason. Do the Yankees have a sense of aggression and urgency and genuine discomfort with the fact that they keep missing out on winning a World Series? Or are the Yankees perfectly content with where things are? And they don't think a 16-year World Series drought is any kind of emergency. And to me, for all the talk about Boone or Cashman, that all leads back to one place, the owner. Hal Steinbrenner is not driven by the obsession that used to define the franchise. But make it clear, he's the one who has changed the mission statement, not the fans. All right, then the final thing I wanted to hit on was the New York Knicks. Knicks season is rolling along, and everywhere I've looked in the last week or so, there's been a lot of talk focusing on Karl Anthony Towns, his struggles, a slow start. He had a big game the other night against the Brooklyn Nets, as if that's supposed to make me feel better. The Brooklyn Nets are actively not trying to win any games. They are tanking as hard as you can tank. So I've seen enough of Karl Anthony Towns over the years to know what kind of player he is. He's an incredibly offensively skilled player, but whether or not you can win a championship with him as one of your primary weapons because of his defensive issues is still a major question. And nothing that happens in November or December or January is going to change that. And that's the point, because this season for the Knicks is more clear-cut than any team, maybe in any sport. The Knicks must reach the NBA Finals this year, otherwise season is a failure. This year is not about Mike Brown. Mike Brown has really nothing to do with it. He can experiment with rotations and focus on all these different aspects of the team. This season is about the players and mostly the front office. They're in lockstep, because when the Knicks season ended last year, the Knicks walked away with one conclusion, one big conclusion. Tom Thibodeau was holding them back. That was the diagnosis. That was the message. Not the roster, not the star power, not the fit. It was the coach. They didn't overhaul the roster, really didn't change the roster much of any. And they didn't go out and fundamentally change the identity of the team in terms of talent. Based on how the coaching search dragged on, it was clear they didn't even think that there was one magic coach that could get the Knicks over the hump. They thought that there was a bunch of coaches who could do a better job than Tibbs did. Okay, great. Leon Rose has built up some reservoir of goodwill. Now you got to go prove it. If the coach was the ceiling, well, then the ceiling's gone. If Tibbs was the problem, there should be nothing holding you back anymore. That's why I talk about trading Karl Anthony Towns. I've seen a lot of Anthony Davis stuff pop up. I'm thinking to myself, hold on, why do you need to make any trades? This is your roster. This is the roster you chose not to change. This is the roster you said was underperforming last year because of the coach. Not because of the talent, not because of the fit. If Tom Thibodeau was the guy holding the team back, well, then this group, the very same group, should now have no problems, no excuses. They should be very capable of getting to where you have to go. And there's no way to shift the blame now. These are the players that you believed in last year. These are the players you doubled down on in the offseason. And these are the players you said were better than the results last year. Now you have to actually back that up. Go show it. The season is not about the long term. It's not about down the road. This year is about one thing: delivering on the standard the organization set for itself the moment it fired Tibbs. Go to the NBA Finals. Otherwise, there's no other way to feel about this season. This season is a failure. And if it doesn't happen, you can't blame the coach. And it won't be because of exclusively Karl Anthony Towns. It will be because the roster wasn't as good as the Knicks thought it was. And that will be on the players, and that will be on the front office. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've watched and listened this long, please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, like, share, and rate the episode, and certainly subscribe to the podcast. And we'll be back next week with a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports.